I'm here with Sarah, toddler food guru and nutritionist.
Hi.
I'm going to ask you a whole heap of questions so we can get to know you first.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Nervous.
You got to answer them really quickly.
Okay.
Okay, good. Who calls you mum?
Willow.
And how old is she?
Nearly 3.
Ooh. If you could eat only one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Pasta.
Oh, I like that. No hesitation. Who's your favourite band or artist?
This is a really tricky one. Probably Hilltop Hoods.
Ooh. Did not expect that. Willow's favourite food?
Depends which way the wind's blowing. Probably pasta as well.
Yeah, good one. If you were a kind of food, what kind of food would you be?
A vegetable, obviously.
A green one?
So nutritious, yeah. Yeah, green and boring. Not to everyone's taste, probably.
Like Brussels sprouts?
Something a little bitter. Yeah. It needs some special care to be loved. Yeah.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I think a lawyer.
Same. Because I really wanted to be able to argue for a living.
I just wanted the money. I assumed you'd earned a lot.
What do you do when you need an energy hit?
Coffee, if it's before 12, or just snack, all the snacks.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What is your motto when it comes to toddlers and how they eat? Do we sit there and force them to finish their meals without, or do we force them to try it? What do we do?
Okay, so feeding toddlers, I guess the key is just relax, feed them family foods. So just pretend they are a normal human being, an average part of the family, and just feed them how you are feeding older kids, yourself, your partner, anyone else in the household. I think we put way too much pressure on trying to feed them as toddlers and labeling them as fussy eaters, and it changes the way we approach and present food to them.
Yeah.
So if we just pretended that they were a normal person, like a friend that was coming over as well, we would relax, take the pressure off, and we'd offer them a wide variety of healthy foods that they need.
Okay, cool. So no separate meals?
No way.
Yeah. Okay. What if they refuse it?
This is really tricky, and I think this is where people start to unravel. They start with really good intentions with their little babies that eat everything. They eat all of the veggies and all of the fruit, and then all of a sudden this food refusal starts and they stop. So once you've offered your kid something and it's been thrown on the floor, obviously you say, well, they don't like it, so I'm not going to present that food anymore. Yeah. And all of a sudden you see that list of accepted foods becoming smaller and smaller and smaller until all of a sudden they're living off white bread, white pasta and mashed potato.
Yeah, all the healthy stuff.
Yeah.
And what if they're not just throwing it on the ground? What if they're just flat out saying they don't like it, they don't want to eat it?
And I think we've got to balance it. So, everybody has their own food preferences. There are foods that I don't really like to eat. There are really foods that you don't really enjoy eating. And so everybody has their own preferences. We need to balance that with, are they refusing because it's more of a developmental issue? Are they just learning to say no?
Yeah.
Are they tired and it's a tricky food to eat and they just can't be bothered with something that's a tricky taste or a tricky texture? Yeah. They just wanted something easy. So there's a variety of reasons why kids refuse food, and we need to keep offering it and be a good role model as well.
Okay, so if there's a certain food I don't like, I'm not going to sit there and say, I don't like that, and things like that.
That's a really tricky one, and it's easy to get caught up into it, especially with your first child, because you might not have certain foods in the house. If you really don't like canned tuna and it's not something you buy, you might not think to offer it to your little one. But it's good to, when you're in the supermarket, peruse the aisles, have a look at things that you don't normally eat that are nutritious choices, and try adding that in as a bit of variety too. And not letting your food beliefs rub off on them is really important, because you might be surprised. But then also being a little bit flexible and working with, if there's foods they really don't like, keep offering them, keep eating them, keep having them in the house, so that the option is always there for when they change their mind or they're ready to tackle that texture or that taste. It's an easy choice for them to pick up and go with it.
Okay, cool. If we're having dinner and I give her something and she's like, don't like that, then what do I do? Because at the moment, I'll just make her something else, because obviously I don't want her to go to bed hungry.
And that's a pattern that we get into, isn't it? And then they learn, I don't really want to eat that, so I'm going to say no thanks, and mum's going to make me fruit toast, banana bread, whatever, dessert. So what I like to do is family style eating, where everybody eats the same meal, but there are different components to that meal, whether they are physically separate, all on separate plates, or there's just bits of a dish that everybody kind of likes. So for instance, say if you're making a curry, you've got the say a meat curry or a veggie curry, you've got some rice on the side, maybe you'll do some steamed greens as well. And maybe if the only veggie that your kid's really keen on is maybe cooked carrot, you put some of that on the side as well. So everybody has the same dinner, but there are elements that you know your kid would like. They may not be too keen on the curry, but you know they like rice and they like the carrot.
Yeah.
So you can ask them, depending on how old they are, you can ask them, which bits do you want on your plate? Do you want to serve some onto your plate? And once you've put the food down in the middle of the table, presented, this is for what's for dinner, that's your job done. It is up to the kid to choose what gets put into their mouth and what gets eaten.
Okay,
and over time, they will start to be familiar with these foods that you're presenting. They might not choose to eat them all the time, but the fact that they are there and continually presented means that they're going to be more comfortable with them when they are ready to give those tricky foods a go.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So since I've been following you, I started trying that with most of our meals, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So she eats something, and at least she's like, I've noticed she says, no, I don't like it when she's just had enough, when she's full. So instead of just going like, I'm done, she's like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And like chucks, she stopped throwing it at me, but you know, she like slides it across. So
yeah, and that's an important reminder that the language that they use to describe how they're feeling about those foods may not be quite accurate. So don't take it to heart. It's probably not your cooking. And it may not actually be that they don't like the taste of it. It could be something else. Maybe it was too hot for them. Maybe it was just the flavour was a bit rich. You'll never know. But as long as there is something in each meal that your kid can fill up on, that will make that meal a success. So it doesn't matter what they've eaten, as long as they've been presented a range of healthy foods and they filled up their tummy. Yeah.
So as far as like making them something else so they're not going to bed hungry, that's really last resort.
Yeah, and it really depends on kind of the day that the child's had, what sort of rhythm you've built yourself up in, because if you've got yourself into some bad habits, it can take a little while to revert back. You know, to a normal sort of family eating style. And I'm not adverse to having a supper late at night. So we don't do dessert every night here. I'm not a fan of, I'm lazy. I don't want to have to prepare a dessert every night. I don't want it to be
more
expected.
dishes.
Exactly. I have enough trouble thinking of 7 meals to cook every night. I don't want to have to think of 7 desserts either. So if one of us, it doesn't have to be Willow, maybe it was me, maybe it was my husband, fancies something to eat a little bit later on after dinner, we might have yogurt and fruit or something like that, but it's offered to everybody regardless of whether or not they ate their dinner or they ate all their vegetables. Or so if, you know, maybe Willow didn't make a great effort at dinner, and we might do supper. If she comes to me afterwards and says, Mum, I'm still hungry, we might say, you didn't really eat much of your dinner, did you? So that's not a punishment or anything. That is just, so let's all have something to eat now. And it's not a reward, it's not an alternative meal. It's just something so that we can go to bed with full, happy tummies. Yeah.
So really like the days when we grew up, I don't know if you grew up like this, but I did, where you had to finish everything on your plate and you had to sit there until it was eaten. They're like over, right?
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Absolutely. Because how many foods do you remember having to do that with, you know, overcooked greens?
Oh my God, like broccoli that was just dead.
And now when you're faced with a plate of broccoli, we're kind of like, oh, I don't really want to eat that.
I can't eat it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It kills the joy of eating. And it's too much pressure. So especially if you've got a sensitive kid who's already struggling to eat a wide variety of foods, adding even more pressure to that, it's just going to put up a wall. You're going to hit a roadblock. So if we can take the pressure off, you know, release these rules about food, and remember that as a parent, your job stops once you've dished up dinner. You know, that was your job to present the food. It is up to them to decide how they eat it. And as long as you continually offer the foods that you'd like them to be eating, you're doing a good job.
Okay,
they will come around eventually.
And I think that that's like a big way off as a parent, like my load, because the last thing I want to have to worry about is well and truly after I've cooked the meal, if they've eaten, lay awake at night, they're going to wake up because they're still hungry. Should I have done that? Should I force her to try that? And just by making sure, I call it a safe food. As long as there's a safe food with every dinner, that there is something that they do normally like to eat, then you shouldn't have any trouble. Let's talk about veggies. I know we've already touched on it, but basically, will my toddler die if she doesn't eat them? And how do I get her to eat more?
I know, right? This is the biggest issue that I think a lot of parents have. And there's a few ways of looking at it, but the biggest one is we don't really need to worry too much about their daily nutrient intake. Not many little kids are deficient in nutrients. You know, unless they have underlying health conditions or their eating is really terrible, in which case you really need to go and see a medical specialist about it, a dietitian or your GP.
Yeah.
But most regular fussy eaters, they're fine. Kids are amazingly resilient and they can extract any number of nutrients out of. The plainest food is still nutrient rich. You're still, you know, plain white pasta, it's still going to give you B vitamins and fibre and those sorts of things. So you don't need to be too caught up in making sure they get their recommended serves of everything. That's a guideline. It's your job to offer them the recommended serves in a day, because remember that we are raising healthy eaters.
Yes.
So that's the idea, is that we are going to get them to a point where they're an adult and they like and eat regularly a wide variety of nutritious foods.
They're not like turned off broccoli for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the goal. Because remember, they're only kids for a very small amount of time. Yes, it is an important period of growth and development, but as long as they are eating, you know, regularly and they're eating okay, they will get through it. What's so much more important at this stage for me, I think, is making sure that they have a healthy relationship with food.
Yes. Exactly right. So that kind of, so basically like my kid can survive on pasta and bread and like porridge.
It's not ideal, but they'll be fine. You know, you need to, obviously, if your kid is really fussy, you do need to keep an eye on things like constipation. If they're not eating iron-rich foods, then anemia can come into play. But if you've got a kid who's a fussy eater, just keep in touch with your GP and have regular conversations about what they're eating and what their health otherwise is. If they're getting sick often or you've got any concerns, it may be worth addressing, but most kids are really resilient. And I don't know many kids that meet, you know, how much fruit and veggies they're supposed to be having in a day, but they all come through in the end. They all, you know, usually by the time they start school, they're kind of back on track and they're where we sort of need them to be.
So it's really them just asserting their authority at the moment.
It can be. There's all sorts of different reasons why. And not all of it is because they are never going to eat that particular vegetable. They will get there. As long as they continue to be offered and you're eating them and they are a regular, normal part of your household, they will get there.
Okay, all right, awesome. So, which kind of leads me into my next question about multivitamins. It's something that, especially as vegetarians, and you know because I come to you all the time, about what I need to do with her. But so far we haven't had any issues, but it is a concern for a lot of parents, I guess. More for peace of mind that the kid has everything it needs. So, do they need multivitamins, and what brands?
My blanket answer for this is no. So if you're focusing on getting the right amount of stuff into them, or at least presented to them, because remember that's your job. Then no, they do not need a multivitamin. So a lot of multivitamins they've got really low doses of lots of, you know, they've got trace amounts, and so they're not going to give you a substantial boost. I like the idea of what you said, their peace of mind. They make you feel better, and sometimes that means that it can take the pressure off, and you might relax a little bit about the foods, but you don't need them. They really are a waste of money. If you do think that your child isn't eating well enough to be meeting their intake, go and get some professional help, and they may need a supplement, but you are never going to be recommended a multivitamin. It'll be something more specific, more tailored to what they need. That's more important. And if they are prescribed any particular medications or a supplement by anyone else, you need to avoid having any other multivitamins or anything like that, because it could have some adverse effects. So just because you bought it in the supermarket or the pharmacy, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a safe or good idea.
All right, cool. And also, like, if it was something that, if your doctor recommended that you got this supplement, is it okay to kind of go to Woolies and grab the same, not brand, but like the same thing that they've said off the shelf, or are we better off just going into the chemist and getting a brand like Bioceuticals or something like that?
It doesn't, as long as it's the same active ingredient, but that can be really tricky if it's not your area of specialty. That can be quite tricky. So I would recommend talking to your pharmacist and just telling them, you know, if you're on a budget, let them know, because it's not always the most expensive brand that's the best. You just have to let them know what you've been recommended, and they will present you with your options.
Can you advise about that as well?
I can.
Okay, cool. Probiotics.
Right, so probiotics are another one. So the science is emerging that supplements may be useful, but we just don't know yet. So I can't have a blanket recommendation that I think all kids should be on a probiotic to improve their gut health. There's a lot of different things that we can do for ourselves and for our kids to improve their gut health. And it's not just about taking a tablet. We need to look after the bacteria that we've already got in there. So we do that by eating lots of fibre. So whole grain veggies, fruit, whole grain veggies, whole grains, fruit and veggies are rich in fibre. So getting lots of them means that we are feeding the good bacteria that we have in our tummy. We also need to look after it by not killing it off with too much processed foods, too many sugary foods, too many foods with too many additives, alcohol for us. Limiting that is going to look after it as well. So we kind of, if you think of it like an aquarium, if your fish start dying, you're not just going to go and buy more fish and put it in there. You're going to clean out the tank and look after the environment first before you go and top it up with more fish. It's probably like people they feel better if they're giving a probiotic. Truth bomb here, I gave Willow a probiotic when she was a baby because I felt so guilty that we couldn't breastfeed for longer. So when I stopped breastfeeding, I was giving her a probiotic, and somebody asked me, why are you giving her that probiotic? Is it a good one? I'm like, oh, just mum guilt. She really doesn't need it. It's probably not going to do anything, but geez, I feel better.
So it doesn't hurt them.
And so that didn't last very long. It was a baby biotic. It was one that was appropriate for them. So what can happen is kids who are naturally maybe have more upset tummies or a sensitive tummy, giving them a probiotic or foods that are really high in probiotics like a kombucha, it can give them an upset tummy. So it could give them the runs, or it could give them a tummy ache. So you want to be careful if your kid's susceptible. Some kids have it and they're fine. You know, you just want to be careful. But I don't think most kids will see much benefit. So there's a lot of research to say that people with healthy microbiomes are sick less, you know, they get less colds and flu, and that is all absolutely true. So looking after our gut health is important. And kids that have a healthier microbiome have less days off school and less days home from daycare, which is all great, but we don't know yet that taking a little probiotic tablet is enough to make a difference or not. It's probably going to be one of those things when our kids are grown up, they're going to say, hey, did your mum make you have those smoothies, you know, with the green powder in it and the probiotic powder? Yeah, what idiots. That did nothing. Because the science will probably catch up and we'll decide that, you know, there's a different way of going about it that's going to be more effective. We just don't know yet. So it's probably not going to do any harm unless you've kind of got a family full of sensitive tummies, in which case you want to be careful. But it's probably not going to make too much of a difference.
Okay, you said about sugary and processed foods. So if your kid eats a lot of, and I know that it's really convenient as well to grab shit off the shelf, but a lot of the time it does have loads of sugar, sweeteners, artificial colours and flavours and things like that. So essentially, could that actually make them sicker in the sense that it'll throw off their gut health? It
can, and it depends on, as with most things, it's sort of a dose related response. It depends on how much of that processed stuff is getting into their diet. And sometimes we need a hand to have a really honest look at that. So a lot of people will make a lot of foods themselves, make a lot of stuff from scratch, but then you open their fridge and pantry and there's a lot of convenient stuff that gets used to make those healthy meals. Now that's not always a bad thing. I'm not a fantastic cook. I don't cook everything from scratch all the time, but it's just about knowing how to read food labels and actually have a look at what's in the food that you're buying. And if when you look at the ingredients list, if it doesn't read like a recipe of something that you could make yourself, put it back and find something that's a little bit more closer to those raw ingredients.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's very insightful. Thank you. I feel a bit better now. I'm like, sometimes I look at even my taco mix. That's just what I was thinking about. Because a lot of the time I use that because it's just all the spices in one. But most of the time, like not most of the time, they are ingredients that you pretty much just have.
And it can be cheaper as well to make your own. And you've got to watch the sodium, especially for little kids. We want to make sure that they're not having too much sodium.
So low salt where possible.
Absolutely, and sugar too. We want to be limiting our intake of sugar. So for little kids under 2, the recommendation is they have no added sugar. So that counts as, you know, honey, maple syrup, all those other things as well. That should be kind of 0. And then from 2, and we can sort of drip feed them a little bit more in. For older kids and adults, it's 6 teaspoons a day, which sounds like a lot. But, you know, that's a can of soft drink. That's, you know, and if they're getting it from their tomato sauce and all these other meal bases that we're using throughout the day, a little bit of honey on their porridge, and before you know it, they've met the recommendation yet. They haven't even had any junk food. So if they are having junk food, you pretty much need no added sugar anywhere else. That's right,
Wow, I didn't even know that.
And crazy. Another way it creeps in is in a lot of foods labelled for kids.
Oh, I know.
Biscuits, yogurts. You think, okay, it's made for kids and it's made for toddlers. Surely it is a healthy choice. Doesn't have any added sugar, is low in sodium. Not always.
Yeah.
You have to read the back of the packs. And most of the time, the unflavoured, plain, normal, whole food variety that you would buy the family is often the best.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper and everybody eats it. And it gets rid of that idea that I'm a kid, I need something special. My food has to come in a packet.
Yeah. It is insane, isn't it? Because when I see that, I would have, before I knew better, I would assume that it had no added sugars, it had no added sweeteners, it had nothing but natural ingredients, but 100% not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Toddlers need a daily diet of 5 veg and 2 fruit.
It depends on how old they are.
Yeah.
So the recommendations change, and I will. So 1 to 2 year olds, and remember this is the ideal.
Yeah.
This is what we need to be offering them, not necessarily what they need to be eating. About 2 to 3 serves of fruit.
Okay.
And then that jumps up to 2.5 serves. That jumps to 2.5 serves for a 2 to 3 year old. So everybody is probably familiar with the fact that when they had a young toddler, their appetite was huge. They were ravenous. They ate everything, and then all of a sudden they get to 2 and they stop, and you're like, "Whoa, what just happened?" But I thought my kid ate everything. Their needs drop. Okay. So if you've got a 1 to 2 year old, a 1 year old that's eating 2 to 3 serves of veg, and then they drop down a little bit, and they're only having 2.5 by the time they get to 3. That's okay. They only need a little bit less because their growth is slowed. Yeah. So they don't need as much energy.
Yeah.
So for a 1 to 2 year old, it's only half a serve of fruit, and for a 2 year old, it's 1 serve of fruit. Now I know a lot of people are going, "Oh wow, my kid has just eaten 4 bananas and 2 apples." It's not the end of the world. Yeah. For some kids, that can be a lot of fruit, and it can cause tummy issues. Yeah. But for me, my only concern with kids that are eating a lot of fruit is what is that replacing? What aren't they eating?
Oh, okay.
So if they're filling up so much on fruit throughout the day, it usually means that they're not getting enough whole grains, they're not getting enough veggies, they're not getting enough meat.
Yeah.
So we need to get that into check. If your child meets all of their recommendations for the other food groups and smashes the fruit, go for it. Yeah. They needed it.
Yep.
So for grains, it's 4 serves for 1 to 2 year old and 2 to 3 year olds. It's the same. Meat is 1 to 1.5 serves for 1 to 2 year olds, and then 2 to 3 year olds, it's 1.5 serves as well. So that meat is all meat alternatives, which include beans and eggs and legumes and your protein sources, and that's to make sure that they get enough iron. And then lastly, what have we got? Dairy, 1 to 1.5 serves or 1.5 serves for your 2 to 3 year olds, and this includes their milk too. So if they're having breast milk, we kind of don't count as a dairy source. It's too hard to monitor how much they're having as toddlers. So we just count it as what cow's milk and cheese and yogurt and things that they're drinking. And they actually don't need that much. Yep. So if they're having more than, say, 500 ml of milk in a day, we say that that's probably a bit too much. So calcium in the milk, it competes with iron for absorption. Right. So it could be inhibiting how much iron they're able to get out of their food. And it's also going to be filling them up. So just like the fruit, if they're having too much fruit, having too much fruit or they're having too much milk, they're unlikely to be getting enough veggies. So if you're having trouble getting enough veggies and getting enough dinner into them, cutting back the milk throughout the day can help build up the appetite so they're actually hungry to eat those foods. If their kids aren't eating their fruit and vegetables and their whole grains, they'll go to use formula if they're not breastfeeding anymore, or they use milk. But I think a lot of people use formula because the way it's marketed to us is that, you know, they're getting all the nutritional benefits. Now, I know that, I can't remember how I know. I think my child health nurse told me that the only reason they actually advertise toddler formula is because it's illegal to advertise it for newborns because it's something that they need to survive. Yep. So, if you have a legitimately fussy eater, and by fussy I mean doesn't eat, is it okay to give them formula? Yeah, this is a really big question, and you are so right. They have to make up for their marketing with toddler milks. And have you seen the ads? The mum guilt is, you know, even I stop and go, wow, that's strong. I love my kid. I want my kid to grow up and be smart and intelligent. Yes! And, you know, and it makes you think, buy my formula. Yeah. And, you know, it's got omega-3 in it, which is crucial for brain development. It's like, yeah, it is, but if you got a child that had that formula and one that didn't and compared them for their IQ, you know, it's not going to make a difference, right? It's ridiculous, but it plays into it. And if you're already feeling a little bit vulnerable, a little bit guilty because of your fussy eater or your toddler that's just thrown another dinner on the floor, which is completely normal. No wonder people are buying it.
Yeah.
But it plays into, if you've got a fussy eater who is a real fussy eater and having trouble getting a wide variety of foods into them, having a toddler milk is just like having too much cow's milk. It fills them up.
Yeah.
And so they don't eat their dinner, but then they get to fill up on the formula.
Yeah.
And it tastes nice, it's sweet, it's comforting, it feels heavy in their tummy. There is no motivation to start eating food. So it just plays into it, and then you end up in a vicious cycle. The older children get, and when they have aversions to particular foods, or they just don't want to try new foods, the harder it is to help get them out of it.
Right.
So my advice is to get off the toddler milks. There are circumstances in children with certain conditions that need them. They will be prescribed them. So unless your health professional has specifically told you they need this, they don't need it. And I do know a fair few parents whose doctors have said, oh, well, you can give them some formula. And they've said that advice because they want mum to feel better.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
Yeah.
So if your GP said, oh, well, you can if you want, don't take that.
That's not prescription.
That doesn't mean your child needs it. It means that it may make you feel better.
Yeah.
For a little while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it stands in the way of progress. I think it just fills them up. They really don't need it. It is so much better for them to learn over time, and I get that it's a slower, harder process, but to get those nutrients from food, because they're not going to be able to sustain on toddler milk forever.
Oh, they're not? They can't like be 12 with their bottle in their backpack and be like, hey, lunch.
I've got a smoothie, it's okay. Yeah, I know. What kind of fussy eaters are we?
You just like tell me the difference between a fussy eater and a toddler.
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's really difficult for me to answer. So heaps of people will ask me, do you have a fussy eater? And I say no, and I think, well, of course not, you're a nutritionist, your kid must eat perfectly. But then when we delve down into, and I perhaps rattle off the list of all the foods that my toddler doesn't eat, today at the moment, this week, a lot of parents in my position would label their child a fussy eater, but I have the perspective to know that she's not a fussy eater, she's a toddler. She's just learning. So at the moment, she doesn't touch any root vegetables, meat.
Even potatoes?
Even potatoes, unless they're chips.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. So she has just started to accept my homemade oven chips with the skin on. So my next phase is to cut them slightly differently.
Yeah.
So that they resemble chips less and less. That's my strategy. But yeah, that's normal toddler eating.
Yeah, cool.
She refuses meals sometimes, a meal that I've cooked and she devoured, and I went, yes, I'm making that again, because both, the toddler and the husband loved it. I make it next week and
nobody wants it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's life. That's part of being a toddler, I do not like green beans this week. I do not like green beans today is a common statement. And then the next morning I can put them in her lunchbox and she'll happily eat them. And I think, but you've just got to keep presenting them.
Yeah.
You've just got to keep offering. Where I think it gets problematic is if it's causing trouble in your family, you need to get help. So often people want to wait until they know what the signs of nutrient deficiencies are, or when things are serious, when it becomes a medical condition. If it's causing you stress and you are anxious about dinner times, go and get some help.
Yeah.
Talk to your GP, get a referral to a local nutritionist or a pediatric dietitian. Go and see them once. And they will just give you some advice and some strategies so that you can go home, implement them, and reduce that stress. Because the biggest contributor to fussy eating is mealtime stress.
Yeah.
The more stressed you are, the more pressure you're adding, the worse it's going to get.
Yeah. And then you get cranky because you're all worked up, but really you're just concerned and you're worried. And then you're just projecting it all onto them, and then they're like, I don't want to eat, and it's just this whole reaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And not every dinner time is going to be a glorious party, where everybody's enjoying the food and chatting and nice. There's going to be drama. It's the end of the day. Kids are tired. But we can manage that. And if things are getting out of control in your house and it's causing any sort of disturbance, if it's causing arguments, if you can see that it's just not going well and you don't know what to do, just go and get help now.
Yeah, that's good. And also, do you really want to wait until there are signs? and symptoms? Wouldn't you rather prevent that? Because then you have to then you have to take supplements, or you have to do something to treat it, when if you get it early, it's just a matter of like changes in habits.
Yeah, that's right. And I know a lot of people that will say to me, oh, I waited until, you know, my child was starting school or in school before we went to see someone because the teachers were noticing. And it can be a really hard road once you've got older kids and you're trying to help them overcome fears or sensitivities with food. When you've got a toddler, it is actually relatively easily, because you break habits so quickly, and
because they've only just formed them.
Yeah, and they adapt so easily to new things.
Yes.
It's so much easier to break out of that. And I know as well, perhaps our parents and our grandparents are giving us advice that, oh, well, we put up with that for you, you know, with you for years. And you think just because you put up with it doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah.
If things are a battle and things are stressful, you can go and get help about it.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a diagnosable condition to get help from a nutritionist.
Yeah. I love that, because like a little bit off topic, but I was reading something the other day that said we're only capable of making a certain amount of good decisions a day. So I can imagine that as a mum, like I reckon all of mine are chewed up by 9 a.m. to be completely honest. But by dinner time, if you've then got a fussy eater and you're like trying really hard to make them eat it and putting all that pressure on, you're not going to make good decisions.
Absolutely.
You're just going to react, you're going to yell, and it's just going to cause a shit fight. Whereas if you just take that out of the equation, you're like, okay, don't eat it then. That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's
And
not worry about it.
if you've got a strategy and some meal plans, and you know what's going to be on the dinner table, or on the table at what time, and you've got a bit of an action plan about what you're going to say or do when a particular food is going to be refused or rejected, and the answer is you're going to be fine with about it. And you're not going to talk about the food. Yeah, we've presented the food and that's it. All of a sudden, it's not so much of an issue anymore, and you have the capacity to not dread that anymore. So there isn't room for making those bad decisions.
Yes,
you know,
because you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
It is only food. It is just food. It is just dinner.
I guess you kind of answered that with tips on how I can avoid fussy eating from babyhood, but you can't really, because they're just being toddlers, not fussy eaters.
Well, that's right. And some kids are more sensitive than others. Some babies are more sensitive than others. Some children go into their fussy stage really early, so it seems like a long time. So you think, oh wow, no, this kid is really fussy, but they've just got those kind of toddler traits for a little bit longer. The biggest tip that you can work towards it by making sure that you introduce a variety of foods, and by offering a mixture of purees and finger food. I think it's a really good way to do it. So some people get started off on the right track, their child's accepting the purees, they're making up some different combinations, but they kind of get too comfortable in that and they're not making it lumpier and lumpier. Yeah, right. And then you may get stuck on soft foods. And so if you do that for too long, some toddlers and some kids then have a real preference for those soft, really easy to eat foods. Yeah. So we do like to make sure that kids are progressing, that babies are progressing well with having lots of different types of food when they're babies, and to mix up the textures a lot. Because for a lot of fussy eaters, it's not taste related, it's texture related. Yes. So if you've got, one vegetable, think of all the different ways that you can present it, both to babies and toddlers, and even make a list. I'm a big fan of making big lists. If you think that your baby or that your toddler doesn't eat very many foods, doesn't like many vegetables, write down every single type of vegetable that you've offered and that you've seen them eat recently. You might say, oh, they don't like carrot. Is that true, or do they just not like cooked carrot? Perhaps they might like carrot sticks or grated carrot, or they like carrot when I cut it into circles but not sticks. Yeah. Think of all those different ways, and by getting them used to having those foods presented in those slightly different ways, can increase the chance that it's going to get eaten and liked.
And I think that once you actually write it down and look at it, you'll probably find that your kid actually isn't a fussy eater and does actually eat a lot of different foods.
Yeah, a lot of people are surprised. I often eat, when I do consults, when they say, oh, how can I get my kid to eat more veggies? What do they eat now? Oh, not much. And then 5 minutes later, they're still going, oh, wait, no, but they will eat green beans. Oh, yeah, so we'll keep adding to the list. So you might be surprised that they do eat a lot of food, and keeping that list handy so that you've, even on the fridge, so that when you're thinking, oh, I need to add something to dinner that I think they're going to eat, have a quick look at your list, and then guaranteed there'll be something in your fridge or your freezer. Perfect. That they'll eat. Yeah. That you can add in, Good.
And now I have all the questions that people have written in to ask.
Excellent.
So I'll fire them at you. How does my toddler have all the energy it needs on a diet of carbs, meat, and a hint of banana?
Isn't it just amazing? And when they've slept for 2 hours overnight and they wake up and they're ready to start the day, and you're like, oh my God.
How? Can I bottle that up?
I don't know. They are mysterious creatures. I think as long as they are getting, you know, they're eating roughly 3 meals a day and there's some variety of foods in there, you would actually be surprised at the amount of nutrients that they will get in from that. You know, I do diet analysis for adults, and I keep meaning to do one on Willow just purely for entertainment purposes, just to see, you know, on the fussiest days, what nutrients actually get into them. Because as I mentioned earlier, even foods like pasta and white bread, they still have nutrients in them. So even when you think that they haven't eaten much, because they've eaten just, you know, the inner circle of the bread and none of the outside, you think they haven't eaten anything. If you could actually see it, you know, piled up at the end of the day, they would actually have eaten more than you think they have.
And that's just small tummies anyway.
Absolutely. And you just see all the things that they haven't eaten. We have an eye for that. As you know, parents, we just hone in on what they haven't eaten and we see it all over the floor. And it seems like so much more when it's spread out on the floor.
It really does.
So I think it's a combination of they don't actually need that much to get by. And because their needs and their intake fluctuates, it's very loud, isn't it? Because their needs fluctuate, so one day they may eat a lot, the next day they eat hardly anything, and you think, oh, how are they getting by? They've still got yesterday's stores, you know?
Okay.
So it's over a couple of days or over a week
of
what really adds up to what we would call their normal diet.
Yeah, that's so good to know. Favorite rice, or just rice cakes, good or bad?
They're not great. They're not very high in fibre, so it's just puffed rice. There's a lot of nothing, but when kids eat them and you have some water, it stodges up in your tummy, so it fills up their tummy and they haven't had much nutrition.
Right.
You know, so it's mostly sort of air and a bit of white rice. If they really love them, put something good on them.
Like hummus?
Yeah, like hummus, avocado, if they'll do slices of tomato, try and get them, use them as a vessel to get something else in. Otherwise, sometimes food.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a thing as too much milk? We totally covered that. So you said 500 ml max a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
If anybody's hearing that and freaking out, cut down slowly.
Yeah.
Usually one of the earlier bottles in the day, or cup, however they're drinking it. You know, the mid-morning one, lunchtime. Get rid of those ones first. Don't go straight to the nighttime ones. Leave them till.
And even just reduce the quantity to start off with, like just slowly reduce it. Yeah. How can I make my kid eat veggies? Oh, we talked about that, letting them choose.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just offering a variety.
Yeah. And you know, all of the tips that you've already heard, grow some in the garden. And I know people that will say, yeah, but I grew some cherry tomatoes and the kid didn't eat them. The idea isn't then, oh, you plant a cherry tomato plant and all of a sudden this child is now drawn to eating cherry tomatoes. It's this idea that they know where they come from, they've seen them, they are now familiar with that food. They know where it comes from. It's normal to have capsicums and cherry tomatoes that we then bring in from the garden. And it's a bit of fun. When you go shopping with them, talk about the fruit and vegetables. You don't need to put on the whole drama of, oh, this is a broccoli and this is delicious. They can see through that. But just talking about, this is a broccoli, we cook this one,
it's
green.
Have it
raw. Whatever you like to talk about. You know, whether something's crunchy or sweet, have those sorts of conversations with them. Again, the end result isn't that they're going to want to devour it right then and there in the trolley. It's just that this is a normal thing to have a conversation.
They can identify it.
And then when you get home, they can be involved in preparing it. So there are so many foods that my daughter would love to prepare. Sweet potato, you know, it makes her day to season them, to put them in before we roast them in the oven. She won't touch them, she won't eat them. But I know that she's so familiar with what they look like. She knows what they feel like,
how to cook them,
and raw with her fingers, because she mixes them into salads and things, so she knows what they feel like. And every now and again she will taste it and she'll put it in her mouth, and if she hadn't been given that opportunity, when she went to pick up a piece of pumpkin, because that's quite soft,
it graces mouth,
she might go, oh, I don't know about that, but because she's familiar with it, when she is ready, she just has to get used to the taste. And so that familiarity really helps with them ending up eating all the veggies, because that's what we want. So just create a positive environment. Don't focus on what goes in their mouth. Focus on what they are surrounded by.
Toddlers have chili in their food. Now, this is an interesting one because I've pretty much like always given it to Havana without even thinking. and spices, and she'll eat it. I just obviously make it hotter for me. So is that okay, or is that a no? Or?
Absolutely. Think of all the cultures in the world that naturally have spicier foods.
Okay, cool.
And their babies are starting on those family foods. So yes, they are fine. If you have a toddler or a baby who's never had any spice, obviously go easy. Start small. But as soon as your baby's having purees and finger foods, start experimenting with different herbs and spices. Get them used to the fact that there are strong flavours. They don't even have to go. You know, I can remember putting some cumin in some porridge once, and my husband was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I forgot that I haven't given her any spices today." And it doesn't even matter. It's just about introducing. And she loved porridge at the time, won't now though. But it was just about giving her some different flavours. And now she will eat very mild, but where you still get a little bit of zing. But I know a lot of families that don't eat together because they have very different taste preferences. So the parents will say, well, we like to have spicy curries and things, so we eat later. No, do the same for your kids. Make it slightly milder. And then, as you said, you can dose it up with chili, self-serve, add a little bit more, either sliced chili or chili flakes or whatever. But absolutely, if you want your children to be eating family meals, which we do, that's the end game, is you've got to be cooking the foods and giving them the foods that you want them to be eating later on. So no more kiddie meals, just give them what you want to be having, just a milder version.
Is it cruel to send kids to bed without dinner if they don't eat what they're given?
Oh, do you mean sending them to bed early, like you haven't eaten your dinner so you go to bed right now?
No, I think she meant more like hungry, like not giving them anything else to eat. Because they didn't eat their dinner.
I do think that is a bit rough. If you're feeding them family style meals and making sure there is one element that they will eat, that shouldn't happen. There should be the opportunity where they can refuse a bit that they don't want for whatever reason, and there still be enough around in that meal for them to fill up. Again, I don't mind having supper for this reason, and sometimes kids refuse meals for something completely different. Perhaps they had a meltdown, maybe their behaviour wasn't the best, and you're sort of maybe wanting to punish them for it. I don't think we should use food or withholding food as a punishment or a reward for that matter. Let's keep food neutral, and tummies need to be filled. So whatever the reason for that meal not being eaten, maybe dinner was too late. Maybe that kid was just so hungry and so past it that they had a meltdown about, the colour of the serving dish.
They were hangry.
Or whatever else. And they were just too hungry to deal with that situation properly. That probably needs to be given a little bit of, space and acceptance, and then offer a bit of supper. So make supper a normal thing. So that it's okay to need a piece of toast to fill up on before bed. Even if you did, whether you did have your dinner or you didn't. Make that okay.
Just do it anyway.
Because food's food and we all need full tummies.
Okay. And also, for our sanity, because then our kid will sleep through the night, but it might wake up hungry at 2 a.m. if we send it to bed hungry. Do it for you. Can a toddler survive on mee goreng and frozen peas? And how many frozen peas are too many? Is that a thing?
Okay, so where do we start with this one? So let's start with the peas. I don't think you can have too many peas. I mean, maybe you could get an upset tummy, but if that's your go-to veggie and your kids like it, go for it.
And it doesn't matter if they eat it frozen, does it?
No. I think a lot of us. I should say the packet does say that we're supposed to cook them to get them up to temperature. I think that might be a food safety issue, but
your kid might get a dose of listeria, but
mine eats them frozen. I think that's fine. The mee goreng noodles, they're really not ideal. So those noodles and your 2-minute noodles, they're really processed, white flour, bad palm oil in there. They're fried. They don't have an awful lot going for them. There are a lot better options. You could get the rice vermicelli noodles. Really think you can get brown rice vermicelli noodles. Even the white ones are fine. You just soak them in boiling water. You don't even need to put the stove on. So they would be a better option. And then you can add peas and corn, even a little bit of soy sauce, whatever.
Just switch it out.
Because the packet flavourings that come with them are pretty horrendous. As well.
How bad is it if they eat frozen muffins? So I'm guessing eating them while they're frozen but cooked.
That's fine. If that's what.
As long as they're not choking to death.
That's right. I think fine. If you're Pre-making meals ahead, whether they go in the fridge or in the freezer, they are just as nutritious as something that you've made fresh. Don't ever feel like just because something seemed convenient that it wasn't as good. If it's homemade, you know, bonus points. Yeah. Frozen veggies are just as good as fresh veggies. You don't lose any nutrients by freezing.
Okay. That's awesome. How can I make dried fruit healthier if that's all she'll eat? And is it really that bad?
Oh, this is a good one. So the trouble with dried fruit is teeth. Yeah. So it's really sticky and it sticks to your teeth. So a serve of dried fruit is about a tablespoon of sultanas. So if you measure out those little boxes that you get in your lunchbox, that's a lot more than a serve.
Yeah.
And so that counts as a fruit, but in our dietary guidelines, it says only sometimes. So it shouldn't be every day having dried fruit because it is so sticky. It's really easy to overeat as well. So if you're thinking about dried apricots, you know, how big are they? Yeah. And you really want to grab a handful, and that could be 5-10 apricots that we could easily sit down, but you would never eat that much if it was fresh.
Yeah, so exactly.
It's really easy to overdo. So dried fruit, you know, is really, it's nutritious. You still got some fiber and nutrients in it. You're not getting the whole fruit though, so you're not getting the skin. You know, if you buy dried apple, it's been peeled, so you're not getting all of it. You're not getting the moisture component either. Yeah. So I would try and work on incorporating some fresh, even frozen fruit in there where you can, to try and mix that up and try and space it out a little bit.
Yeah. How do I introduce new foods if she just flat out refuses? If she's like, no, I don't want them.
Yeah, just keep introducing it and don't force it. Don't talk about it. Just keep it there so it's familiar, and don't overwhelm it. I think we try and put really big portions on kids' plates, especially on put 3 peas on. Literally 3 peas. Okay. 1 green bean. 1 piece of pumpkin. Right. I really like pumpkin. Willow hates it. So every time we have pumpkin, she has 1 piece of pumpkin on her dinner. She's so used to it now, she doesn't even move it out to the side. She eats around it because she knows there's nothing wrong with it. It's going to stay there. It's fine. And she's just used to it. And one day she will pick it up and she will eat it.
Yeah. So she'll just be like, fuck it, today's the day.
Absolutely. But if I didn't keep doing that, she wouldn't. And, you know, she's done that recently with sweet potato. She's tried a bit. I don't think she was a big fan. But if I hadn't have persevered, she would never have tried that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So fruit and veg quality now versus 30 years ago, it said that it's not as nutrient rich as it once was. So how do we get what we need from our food now?
This is a really controversial one. So some research has been done to show that our soils are depleting in the nutrients, and obviously that's where fruit and veggies gets its nutrients from, brings it up from the soil. It doesn't tell us the whole story because obviously we use fertilizers and things that has nutrients in it, so our fruit and veg isn't as bad as I think gets reported. Yeah. So it still is very nutrient rich. Yeah. The other thing is we've developed different strains of fruit and vegetables because they produce more, or they're sweeter.
Okay. Yeah.
So that may change the nutrient composition as well. But what we do know is that people that eat more fruit and veggies end up healthier and live longer, and that's modern day vegetables that we buy from the supermarket. Yeah. So you don't need to go to a farmer's market. You don't need to buy your own organic, biodynamic fruit and vegetables to meet your nutrient needs. You can meet your nutrient needs and exceed them by going to the supermarket and buying fruit and veg. The key is to eat as much as you can. You know, so 5 serves of veggies, 2 serves of fruit. I know most people listening to this probably aren't meeting that. You think you do. Weigh it out for the day. Measure out how much you have.
I'm a vegetarian. I know I don't. Like fruit, I do easily, but not veggies.
Yeah, it's really tricky. So put all your effort into getting your 5 serves in first, and then maybe you could start to look at where it's coming from or try to improve your diet in other ways. But for most of us, we will see the most benefit just by eating 5 serves of veggies that comes from the supermarket or wherever you buy fruit and veggies.
Okay, awesome. Even frozen.
Even frozen. Yeah.
Now timing. So this is a really good one because I go through phases like this with Havana, but my 2-year-old snacks all day. So is it important to have a formal breakfast, lunch and dinner? And how do you make that happen if they're used to snacking?
Yeah, it depends on the child and it depends on the family. But for people that come to me because they're having trouble with their child not eating meals and not eating a good enough variety of food, usually, you know, they're not having their meat and they're not having their veggies, it's because they're not hungry for their meals because they're snacking all day. Now, if they were snacking on beans and meat and vegetables, you know, I wouldn't really have so much of a problem with that, because often as we get older, we stop the grazing and we start craving those meals more. But for kids where that just isn't happening for them, sometimes we need to put that routine into place, and we need to be a little bit stricter with this is breakfast time, this is lunchtime, this is dinner time. And kids have only got tiny tummies, so having morning tea and afternoon tea is pretty essential, I think, for most kids, just to get them through. So map out roughly when those times are for your kid, when it suits them, and when it suits you guys to have dinner together, when morning tea and when afternoon tea would be, and even a loose structure of what you're going to feed them. Because often kids that graze, they get used to having really easy things like milk, fruit, yogurt,
that you can just quickly grab and give them, like popcorn.
And then having that just throughout the day, and they're missing their doses of whole grains and protein. So if you can think about other ways to get them in, and kind of schedule it in, and then when they're hungry between meals, because it can take a little while to adjust their body clock and their rhythm of tuning into their hunger. Often kids that are grazers, if they feel a tiny bit of the hunger, they go, oh, I need to fix this now. What can I have? So if we let that hunger build up a little bit, you might need to take them outside, take them for a scooter ride, take them to the park, do something to distract them. It doesn't have to be for very long, but just so they get used to the idea that I can wait until my tummy voice says, oh, I'm really hungry now. And then you can come home and have a meal or a snack together where you perhaps sit down, maybe make it a little bit more formal. Just to sort of gives them the opportunity to eat a little bit more. And it can take a little bit of work, but once you've sort of reset that clock, they'll be up to it.
Vera now does video consults too, so you can, I'll pop her details down there so people can get hold of you. You do mothers groups as well, don't you?
So in Perth, if you've got a mothers group, I can come along to your meeting, really informal. The kids can be around and we can just chat about whatever your kids are up to at the minute and how we can maximise what they're eating.
Awesome. And you teach them how to cook as well?
I can do that,
And meal plans and everything.
All of that. Anything. Food, families, getting everybody in the household eating roughly the same kind of stuff. That's sort of that's my area, the practical side of it.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
That was good.